Oh, hello there. What's going on, everybody? It's Jeff for the Hooniverse, standing here in front of my truck, the HoonTruck. It's been a while since we've talked about it. I mean, I talk about it on the podcast, which you should be listening to every Wednesday at 10:30, but it's fun to show you the truck and to drive the truck, and I haven't done that in a while because it's been getting some work done on it. It's here at friend of Hooniverse, Rick Radcliffe, at his Norco High School auto shop. And we're going to dive in and see exactly what's been done. And it's almost done. It's 99% of the way there. Then once it's all finished, we're going to do another video showing you what it's like to finally drive it. And we will do the first burnout. But for now, we're going to dive in and see exactly what's been fixed on my baby.
So you remember when you brought the truck down, we were just going to work on the drive shaft because the vibration made it impossible really to drive it around on any regular basis. And we wanted to figure out why the battery kept dying, because you go out to start the truck and it won't start. It kind of puts a damper on things too. So we brought that in, and with most projects, especially with old cars, we had kind of, in the military they call it mission creep, where you're supposed to do one thing and you do 100 other things. So in the process of working on your truck, not only did we send the drive shaft out, have it completely rebuilt with Spicer U-joints, with a new carrier bearing, and then had it balanced also. We found the source of the parasitic drain on the battery, which didn't require any work at all. All we did was turn the headlight switch all the way off because the instrument panel lights were staying on, and that was the source of our parasitic drain. We verified it by putting a voltmeter on it, and we have zero drain now. So should be good to go on that. Obviously I haven't driven the truck since it's been here. But in the process of taking care of those two things, we started looking at some other things, and we noticed, first of all, we noticed that your bump stops, after 50 years of use, your bump stops were about a quarter of the height that they were supposed to be. They just worn out. Rubber deteriorates over time. And so when you would hit a bump, it would be a much harsher hit from the suspension compressing than if we had a full bump stop. They're not very expensive, so we decided to go ahead and replace them. Unfortunately, the bump stops came with a self-tapping bolt. The self-tapping bolt isn't a real great idea. It didn't hold, so we installed them, and they immediately stripped, so we had to go through and re-engineer, re-tap the hole, and get those mounted in. So a 5-minute process actually became more like a 3-hour process. We wound up pulling the lower control arms off and went ahead and sandblasted and painted the lower control arms, sandblasted and painted the coil springs. And the reason we had the lower control arms off was because while we were under the truck, we noticed that the kingpins were worn. And so you're getting a lot of play from the front suspension from the worn kingpins. So again, kingpin kits are like $30, so it wasn't that big of a deal. One side came out just fine. The other side had to go to the machine shop. Well, it was a good thing it did, because I've never done kingpins before. This truck is way older than I am. And I took it down to our machine shop here in town, and he said, oh, well, you know you have to hone the new pins to the cylinder. And I went, what? He said, yeah. So they went ahead and took care of honing the kingpins properly, got everything installed correctly for us. So the guy that owns the machine shop is like older than dirt. Knows anything up to about the 1970s, he's an expert on.
Right.
So
the older than dirt guys are the ones who know what they're
yeah.
doing. Yeah.
So I can guarantee you those things are completely done properly. Well, in the process of all this, you decided that disc brakes would be a great thing to have on this truck. And I agree, disc brakes would be a great thing. So you ordered this bolt-on kit, which is spectacular. From Master Power, thank you.
Who gave us a discount.
Give us a discount.
Master Power.
Discounts are great. And went ahead and put it on. The only thing that we didn't realize was that in adding a dual channel master cylinder, when this truck originally had a single channel master cylinder, what that means is now we split the fronts and the rears, I had to bend up all new brake lines for it. So it's not something you do very often, and I'm not very experienced with it, so I got a friend of mine to come down and help. Thanks, Dan, for the help there. We have new front brake lines bent up. The new rear brake lines should be done tomorrow sometime. and then we'll be able to put fluid in the system and check the brake system and make sure all that works. And then moving towards the back, your truck, when you bought it, had a receiver hitch installed in here. And whoever installed the receiver hitch didn't do a particularly good job of it. It looks like something like wet snot was holding it in. So I grabbed my Sawzall and I cut the receiver hitch out for you. In the process, I nicked one of the wires because it runs right over top of it. And so I'm like, all right, no big deal. I'll go ahead and fix that. And then I realized that everything from both taillights to about a foot in front of the axle was just completely messed. It was held together with masking tape. People had just wrapped electrical tape around it. It was horrible. So I went through, resoldered and heat shrunk everything, and then rewrapped it in electrical tape. So you should be good to go from there up to about the axle. The other stuff, I don't warranty that. I didn't touch it. You also asked us to install a roll pan, and we got into installing the roll pan and noticed that this corner had been hit. And so I have a tool called a Uni-Spotter, which is really nice. It basically, instead of having to drill a hole like you would with a slide hammer and then pull the dent out, it welds a stud onto the metal, and then it allows you to just use a slide hammer and pull the metal out. I hammered on that thing for a half an hour and it would not move. So we actually broke out the torch. So you can see the little scorch marks right here. We broke out the torch to see if we could move it all. And we did get some of it pulled out. I don't know if you remember, but this panel was bent all the way inside. We were beating on this thing with a sledgehammer with it hot, like glowing red hot, beating on it with a sledgehammer to get that much done. So really what's going to happen is a real body person is going to have to come in and cut this corner out and replace it with a new piece of metal. Beyond my skill level. Sometimes you have to know when to say when, right?
Sure, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. All right, so if you remember when you dropped the truck off, there's a little issue with opening the hood. Yeah. And when you went to open the hood, one side would come up and then the other, and it was kind of not so happy. So LMC Truck was nice enough to have a set of hood hinges available. So we put new hood hinges on, and that seems to have made the hood opening experience much more pleasurable. In addition, when you came in, the battery was being held in with, I believe, a shoelace.
It was a shoelace.
Not really an accepted form of battery hold down. So we pulled the battery tray out, sandblasted it, repainted it to help keep down on the corrosion. We tried to buy a new one, but a new one's not available for this truck as far as we can tell. So used a universal battery tray to collect some of the acid on the bottom. We've got a nice hold down in here now. You can go four-wheeling in this thing and that battery is not coming out. You'll notice we don't have it connected right now because we're still in the process of working on it. Another thing that when the truck came in, someone who will remain nameless installed a new radiator, but when they installed the radiator, zip ties were used as the fastening method. That's really not accepted either. So rather than having these little rinky-dink zip ties in here, we've actually drilled some holes and solidly mounted the radiator. Not the perfect way to mount the radiator, but given what we had to work with, that's what we could do. Right. Really what we would want is a rubber mount on the bottom, a rubber mount on the top. That would have required a lot more fabrication, and we just didn't have the facilities to do that. So we'll have to monitor this and make sure that we don't have any issues with any cracking of the flanges. Okay. Just kind of, every oil change, kind of take a look and just make sure everything looks like it's in here. Another issue that we had is that the inlet on the radiator is smaller than the outlet on the thermostat housing. And so what had happened was the hose that it came in with was the same diameter all the way through, and it was causing us to have a leak at the top of the radiator. Not a massive leak, but enough that we were getting some dribble out of it. And I don't know about you, but I don't like things that leak. So I fought with it a little bit, and we have a great auto parts store here in town. Part Sources has supplied most of the stuff for your truck. And I talked to them and like, oh, we have this universal. And so it's 2-inch on one end and 1 3/4 on the other. And it fits in here perfectly and looks really nice and doesn't leak, which is the biggest part of it.
You guys did the overflow.
We had to remount the overflow so that it would fit correctly. And unfortunately, where we wanted to mount the overflow, there's a voltage regulator in the way. So we had to relocate the voltage regulator, put a couple of different screws in there. Now the coolant overflow is right where it's supposed to be. Inside, we had some more challenges that faced us. You'll notice there's no steering column in the car right now. And that's because as we started working underneath the hood, we noticed that there's a part called the rag joint that joins the steering column to the steering box. We noticed that that part was worn and needed to be replaced. And as we started to work on it, we discovered that the bearing in the steering column was bad also. Having never torn down a steering column for this truck before, we figured it was easier to pull the entire steering column out, figure out what was going on with it, get it all put back together on the bench, and then put it back in. In the process of pulling the steering column out, we noticed also there were some wiring issues, so we have some more wiring repairs to do as well. And the steering column really is ready to go back into the truck, except it's easier to get in and work on the brake system, the last couple things that we have to do, this being one of them. The brake light switch that was installed in the truck previously was actually a combination of electrical wire and zip tied to the brake pedal. And then there was a spring attaching it to the firewall. So when you applied the brakes, it would activate the switch. I don't really believe in electrical tape to hold switches in. So we're going to fabricate a mount for that. This part right here goes on the brake pedal. This part will be fixed. And then it'll be a little more reliable way of actuating your brake lights and making sure that they work.
So it's been tough to live without my baby over the course of the holidays. Lots of cool old cars running around town in Huntington Beach where I live. This truck wants to get out there, but it has to wait. It's almost done. Rick and his boys and girls are doing a great job on this truck. Tons of progress. I know I said that I was going to be doing most of the wrenching on this, and I've done a lot of it, but there's things that I can't do. I don't have a lift. I don't have the parts to handle drive shaft work. I don't want to do the brakes because I'm afraid that I will crash when I don't do them correctly. I put the damn radiator in with zip ties. So when I need to change the pads, I'll learn how to do that. And I will get more hands-on with this truck because I know some of you are bummed that I'm not doing some of these things. But I was eager to get this truck to a place where it was a better daily driver than it already was. And it's already there. I haven't even turned the key, but I can already tell this is going to be so much more fun to drive. And it was already fun to begin with, but I can't wait to get this baby back. We got to put the plate on the back so that I don't have to stick this one in the window, even though I'm not putting a front plate on this one, but I do want the plate that's in the window to be on the bumper. So roll pan in the future, more interior mods. And then once this truck is home, we're taking it somewhere else where, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know where this truck is going next. And it's going to be fun when it gets there too, so stay tuned for that. Once this truck does come back though, we're going to do the first burnout, the first drive video of it, so it can live up to this portion of it. It already lives up to this portion, and now needs to live up to this portion. So when that video comes, you'll be ready, the truck will be ready. We'll all have tons of fun.